It's not working, Chris. For some reason, our opener's not kicking in. So we are doing this live. Chris, you can hear me?
No. Restart it. I want the opener. Without the opener, I can't start.
I know it's not working. I don't know why it's not working. It's there. It's just it won't kick in. So I can do it down. It doesn't quite work the same though. So
and it doesn't. Your tempo's all wrong.
well, I'm trying to speed through it. I'm trying to speed through it, man. You leave me alone.
Hey guys, how's it going? Episode 85. Professional and on top of things as usual is the producer seducer Ryan and me.
I don't know why that didn't work. I don't know why that didn't work.
Whatever.
Stupid Discord.
This is as good as it gets. We peaked. We peaked a long time ago. People know this.
Yeah, we're just fading out now into the sunset. That's us.
Pop in the chat there. Let us know if everything's okay, guys. I don't see anything in chat yet. Just make sure that everything's up and live and rocking.
We're over, buddy. We are over. We are done.
Good. It looks good. It looks fine.
That's good.
Anyways, yeah, let's just get it out of the way. Thanks again, patrons, super chatters. We always forget to mention you guys. Appreciate it big time. Helps keep things rolling behind the scenes here. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. Ryan.
Yep.
What? You were gonna say something?
I just want to talk about one game here before we
I know.
get to
I was going to ask you.
I wasn't sure.
I was going to ask you what you're playing.
Well, obviously I played Swarm, Swarm 2 rather. So if you guys are interested in that review, you can go check it out on our channel. It's good. It's all right. I didn't like the fact they went from campaign to a roguelike campaign. I understand why, I guess. What's up, Space Denizen? But
wasn't it always a roguelite?
No, it was just like, I think it was like 24 stages or 20 stages. Okay. And just went through each stage, and if you die, just restart that stage, you're good to go. And now it's a roguelike. Very, very, like, the game structure is very similar. I mean, identical to Until You Fall, in regards to like that exact roguelike structure, where the levels are random. Like there's like what 18 stages, I think 18 stages, 3 different worlds, and I think so every 6 stages is like themed. I think there's like, I guess like 10 levels to choose from. So you don't quite see the same levels all the time. And they change up their power-ups and everything else. So it's not quite the same thing every time. And obviously in between each stage, you get to pick a new buff. And then once you die, you can spend points earned on permanent upgrades and then just repeat the process until you get through the bosses to the end of the game. It's all right. It's not bad. The gameplay from Swarm is solid, and that carries over to this one. But once again, like I said, if you guys are interested, please watch my full review to decide if you want it or not. But the game I did want to talk about today, which I believe is out, if it's not out today, it's out tomorrow. I believe it's out today though, is, can I do this? I don't know if I can do this. Is Aka R. It came out for PSVR 2 today, which I believe is the first time this has been available in VR. And this is from Jeff Minter, the guys over at Lamasoft. So he did Polybius, and the rest of them I can't remember off the top of my head. Before I get to it, Chris, have you played Polybius? Like, have you played his previous stuff?
I'm trying to remember. It's like a weird...
It's been a while. It's been a long time.
Right? Like artsy-fartsy VR shit. Right?
It's that arcade retro visuals, but they're just like flying at your face, and just it's nonstop.
Yeah,
so this one's
not my thing.
No, this was weird. I was gonna try to put out a review for this thing, and I still might. It's not a bad game. It's a weird game. Like it's like a top-down shooter, but in VR. So I think things are flying at your face constantly, but it still plays like a traditional top-down shooter in that, your little dude is like in the center of the map. You have to just shoot. You have to drop bombs, and the bombs create these like, it's like synesthesia, like that stuff from Rez, where it's just this cacophony of sounds that trigger more sounds. But if you're like an audio guy, right, like that.
Wow.
But it sounds cool. Like it's like these stages are timed, where if you time things right, like the music that plays that matches the explosions, it sounds pretty slick. And then there's layers to this thing. It gets harder and harder. My initial play of this thing, I was just baffled and confused and didn't know what I was doing and questioned why it was in VR. But I dove back in and played some more, and it's kind of addicting, actually. I don't want to say, like, I'm still struggling to decide how I feel about this game. It's not a bad game by any stretch. But it's very much that classic retro arcade look and feel that he's famous for. And the VR does make it better. Playing flat, which I tried, it wasn't the same. It was cool just to have like things and stuff flying at your face. It's as simple as that is. It's not like you're not dodging anything. There's no interaction other than just little, like, I keep saying retro, but little retro like pixels and lines coming at your face. It's fine enough. But it's surprisingly addictive. Like I can definitely see where people will really enjoy this and people will really hate it. And I don't know what the price in this thing for myself. If this was like $10, I'd say that's probably a really good. That's really good for what's here. There's not a lot of content. It's just built around chasing high scores. But if it's more than that, then I really start to question kind of its place in the PSVR2 pantheon. But that being said, for those that are curious, I'm actually impressed. Sounds dramatic because I wasn't. I went in with low expectations, but it's not too bad. It's good enough, I guess, from what I've played so far. So yeah, Aka R, which I don't like that name at all, just because you can't Google that. If I said that, you'd be like, "How do you spell Aka?" Like it's not. It's not a good name, but the game itself, it's like traditional top-down arcade fun, and the VR does make it better.
Meh.
I get it. I mean, this is why I'm talking about it now. This is why I'm talking about it now, and that's why I didn't do a review because
App Lab.
Well, it's I don't know if App Lab, but like I said, for me it comes down to the price point, and if he's charging like 20,
Space Denizen seems like he's in. He's pumped. So
well, there you go. Like I said, it's not bad. It's refined. I didn't.
Dude, have you played that new game?
That's the problem. As I really wish he would have called it like, I don't know, shooty bang bang or something. I'm not sure, but Aka R. I mean, it's what he does. It's Jeff Minter. He is his own beast. But
well, it's not as bad as being the band live, which was not a future-proofed band name to come up with before the days of Google searches.
This is true, yeah. live.
It's brutal, trust me. As a fan of the band, it's so brutal. You're trying to look them up for anything. Live, the band live. Anyway, I have not played anything in VR. Boo.
What's going on, Chris?
Come on. I'm going to talk about it. You know what, guys? Actually, I mean, you've been around. You know the channel. You know me. You know I'm broken. I'm fucked up. And I deal with depression and stuff. And it's interesting because I remember you and I did an episode a long time ago.
Oh, for the record, last week's episode was not due to what he's about to say. Last week's episode was something else entirely. But sorry, just to
thank you, because I was like, oh, Chris was sad, so they didn't have an episode. Wah. No, that was not the case. But yeah, life shit. But it's funny, that old episode that we did where we talked about I think it's something like why we don't put on the headset sometimes. That was like an episode we did a while back. Yep. And it's interesting because for someone who deals with like depression and I think a lot of people in the VR scene do too, because like I've said this before, we're not all types of people. I've noticed there's a lot of people early adopters of VR who they're like the ultimate escape. That sounds like a plan. But that's the thing, you would think that I just this hating life, that I would be like wanting to just jump into the headset and jump into some crazy world. Yeah, Flatty. It's weird, man. Like it's just like the last couple of weeks, just the way I've been feeling. Like the idea of putting on a headset just feels like too much work. It's not. It's like, I mean, part of it because maybe it feels like it's kind of like isolating, but it's mostly due to the fact that all I want to do is just be absolutely completely lazy on the couch and doing nothing. Like I don't just the idea of the activity alone of up and swinging my arms and sitting upright, and it just feels like so much work.
I get that, especially with the current release schedule too. It's not just been anything that's been like, I gotta play that in VR in the last few weeks. That's a big part of it. But
no excuse though, because I got a back catalog like you wouldn't believe, especially considering how little VR I was able to play in the last 6 or 7 months, right? But yeah, it's been a tough go. There's been games I wanted to play. I've been really wanting to jump into some UEVR stuff, and I want to do an episode around that. So those of you just in chat there, put on your thinking caps there, because what I'd like to do, I haven't even talked to Ryan about this, but I would like to do an episode around UEVR, because Ryan and I, like, not being super modding guys, haven't really played a lot of games in that, but I'm getting more and more interested in games that I keep hearing. And I'd like to do an episode around, like, kind of a two-part episode. One where everybody kind of comes into chat and like recommends games and talks about like kind of like things that we should look into. And then kind of the second part is that is I'd like us to kind of report and do a follow-up episode of some of our experiences in it. Because there's been some pretty awesome stuff that's starting to come to the surface as far as like must play. And obviously we were talking about in the previous episode a little bit around whether we think UEVR is a good thing for VR, and I still think the verdict's out on that. I'm still concerned that it's going to go the way of like some like kind of like how we've seen AI affect certain industries, where it just the creative aspect of it starts to become less motivating for people, in the industry, if it can just be kind of ported so easily with an algorithm. So, anyways, that's probably another full episode, but that's something for those of you who are watching now and start putting your lists together.
So bottom line, Chris sad, VR boring.
Fuck you. This is why this is my motivational support help here. This is my mental health group here. Ryan's just like, so what you're telling me is, wow. Just another quick thing. If you guys hear like zipping or whirring in the background, I apologize. Bad timing on my part. There's a 3D printer going off in the background, and I can't stop the print. It was supposed to be done by now. So, just if you hear that, that's what it is. I don't know if you can hear it, Ryan.
I can't hear anything, so we should be good to go.
Perfect.
I'll just mute you. I mute you all the time. So.
On that note, it's show and tell time. Look at this.
Here we go. Here we go, boys and girls. This is what my cohort's been up to when he's not playing VR. He is.
Yeah. Look at that bad boy.
I don't know what that is.
It's a shoulder. It's so it's got a stand. It's a shoulder.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Look at that bad boy. Ooh. Yeah. This is what I spend my time doing.
Space Denizen, the game might be out tomorrow. I was originally told March 8th, then they said March 7th, so I was kind of up in the air in regards to what the actual date of the release is for AKR. So if it's not there today, it'll be there tomorrow. The embargo's up today, though. At least I hope it is, because, well, I just blew past that, so whoopsie. But yeah, so Chris, by the way, for Halloween, I'm expecting you to just be like just the most insane Halloween costume this year. And you're supposed to wear that on the podcast. I want to see this 3D printed monstrosity you're creating.
No, it's probably going to be a Ghostbuster. I didn't get to do it last year. Very good. Great tantrum. It is a Predator gun. It is a shoulder cannon.
So,
anyway, okay. So I do feel like, in retrospect, that the thumbnail for this episode's topic, in some ways, is a little clickbaity, because I mean, I think outright, do we need a PS5 Pro? The answer is a definitive
no.
We don't need one. The question is more, do we want one, or would it benefit from one?
Look, I mean, and this is obviously VR focused. We can go into all the pros and cons of a non VR Pro, for what it does. But as far as this conversation goes, it's the benefits of a PS5 Pro and the PSVR2, and if there is any that actually matter. And personally, I am so against the idea of a Pro console at this point in time, especially this generation. Last generation with the PS4, it made a lot more sense, at least at the time. We didn't really see the results like I expected to. With the PS5 or PS4 Pro essentially being still locked to the PS4 in regards to, we got a bump in resolution, or, a few things here and there, a pro patch that gave us like extra whatever. It typically ended up being like bonus textures or, better performance, something small. I mean, the biggest story is, that I can come back to is the fact that Gran Turismo Sport, had multiplayer. We could have got the full release of that game on the Pro, but because the PS4 regular or standard didn't have the specs, we got the version we got, which was neutered down and crappy. And I just think that with this generation of VR, I mean, there's more to it than this, but I think all we're asking for with the PSVR with a PS5 Pro and the PSVR2 is the exact same situation where whatever power this thing has, it's still going to be stuck to the power of the PS5. And we saw what happened with PS4 Pro, and I don't think, or PS4, and I don't know how that would change. We're still get whatever, and on top of the fact that the quality of games isn't, in my personal opinion, very rarely even pushing the power of the PS5, let alone the power of a Pro when it comes to VR.
True. So I
Well, I don't
love.
speak lies.
So well, I don't necessarily agree with all that, but I don't necessarily disagree either. Like I said, it comes down to a lot. I feel like this conversation lives in the nuance, in the fact that it's like, do you need one? No. But would we not benefit from one? Yeah, of course we would. And so I do feel like it's the conversation lies in the middle there. And also, I mean, some people get butthurt, I think, and initially push back against the idea of mid-gen consoles, and in like mid-gen headsets, even in the case of like say something like Meta, just because they don't want to spend more money, they don't want to be left out, they don't want to, they just spend a bunch of money and now something's better, and they don't want something better to come out and be better than what they have. I do think that there is some initial pushback. And so a lot of people's acceptance or desire for these things are probably dependent on their financial situation. I was super excited about the PS4 Pro coming out because I thought that the PSVR 1 like shouldn't have even been running on the PS4. Like for some of the games it was trying to do, like it was already maxing out that little system. I
Mm,
agree with you though that I do think that like the problem with the Pro, I felt, especially when you've got small VR teams already, is this idea of being able to optimize it for two consoles. To like even be thinking about the Pro. It's why we so many Pro patches come way later in development, I think. And so very rarely did we, I think, get the full muscle out of what we could have gotten from the Pro. And that
oh shit! Apologies, people. Apologies. Damn it.
I tell you, damn it, Ryan. So I don't even know if people heard what I said. I think, just to repeat, if anyone didn't hear what I was
Repeat it.
saying
Repeat
there,
it.
I was saying that there are some definite examples on the PS4 Pro, on the PSVR 1, where it was game changing. Like when they took advantage of it, like I said, like Solace Project, Mage's Tale. There's more. My mind's just blanking right now. But
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now to try to see.
when you saw some of those games when they took advantage of it, um, it was huge. And it's like, so a game like Solace Project, could they have made it look that good on the PS4 Pro? Yeah, probably. I mean, you look at Skyrim. I would say Skyrim, without the Pro, looked better than the Solace Project, before it had the Pro. But again, you're talking about Bethesda's like team sizes and their
Mm,
budget to be able to optimize. And so this is partly where I'm going with the PS5 Pro is, you know, I'm trying to like think of the best way to say this. There are titles that like obviously we can pull out of our asses, like the Resident Evil games, both of them, GT7. And you can be like, look at those games. They're amazing looking. They're better than
mm,
anything on the Quest. They're better than a lot of games that have recently come out for PC VR. Like there's no need for it. True. But all of those games, and the one that I intentionally left out was like Call of the Mountain, the Horizon game, all had reprojection. Call of the Mountain, personally, unplayable. I cannot play it unless I'm moving in a swivel seat. The reprojection is so bad; it's so blurry for me. It is rough. And a PS5 Pro would really, really help. And I actually think that the PS5 Pro would help the smaller teams more than it would necessarily help the bigger teams. Because like GT7, RE8, RE4, I mean, yes, there's reprojection, but they've used it very well. And it's very slickly done. It's the better examples of it, especially GT7, because, well, you're locked in a car moving forward, so they can hide it for the most part. It's the games that or the developers are not savvy enough or don't have the budget, or Unity's made it too difficult to go use eye tracking and the dynamic foveated rendering to like make to use the resources of the PS5 more economically. If they have more headroom on a PS5 Pro, it just makes that process easier instead of immediately having to go to the reprojection route. And I think that's the immediate point. That's the first thing that anyone could point to, is that a PS5 Pro would help us not have to go to reprojection, because the PS5 is not a powerhouse. I'm sorry, but it's not. Especially not when you're looking in VR terms. It's like a 2070 on a good day, compared to like a PC GPU. I mean, that's not a powerhouse GPU when it comes to VR at all.
I just don't think I don't know. I mean, like, how much is a PS5 Pro going to cost? Obviously, we have no idea, but it's more than the PS5. Oh man, trailers are just screwed up like crazy. Um, but is that cost, like, does that cost have to be justify reprojection being fixed? Like, and
No,
and
and this is where it comes back to like the need versus like, would I want it? Like, would I think the answer, sorry, I've cut you off completely there. Continue.
no, it's what I was. I mean, I basically finished the thought. It's just like, so, like, reprojection is the problem, or one of the problems, I guess. And like I said, so if this thing costs $600, $700, maybe they drop the price of the PS5 by $50, $100, maybe, but we're still talking like a lot, a lot more money for a console that just fixes reprojection. It doesn't fix any problems with the headset as far as sweet spots, any of that kind of stuff. Any of the headaches you've had in putting this thing on other people will still be there. It just fixes this. It'll fix that one major problem, and obviously you have more computing power, except for the fact that you still have to still develop for the PS5. It's the whole it's the same argument I just made, where like you still have to develop to the lowest common denominator and then upscale. And
yeah,
that would be fine. That would be fine
Oh.
if we were getting crazy AAA experiences that we could see are pushing the system to its max. We are
Yeah.
not getting those, and we're not
Well,
getting them or not getting them enough to justify spending a whole, like, what's the next AAA game coming out for PSVR 2?
Yeah, I know.
Like, it's Metro, and AAA is in quotes here.
No, you're right, and maybe mileage varies depending on how much you hate reprojection. Now, like, again, like, I'm not standing here and saying that I think I can't make a case really to necessarily to justify to someone who's doesn't want to spend the money, like, why they should spend another, like, let's just say another 500, 600, $700 on a pro. If like, and especially if they're kind of a VR only person, like if that's their main focus, I don't think they're going to have a lot of games that they can like point to as being like a huge example, that it's just going to be worth it for them. Because honestly, like, you're right. I think right now it's going to be mainly reprojection. Some games it's going to be resolution. For example, like the Light Brigade came out, and that guy, I think it was like one guy. It's a pretty small team. I talked to him. He had a really hard time getting the because he was basically had the Quest version that was built like to run on like nothing hardware, and then he had a PC version, and the PSVR2 version of the Light Brigade was the PC version, and he could not get when it first launched. Like, it was rough. That PC version did not run well on the PSVR2, and you know he had to he had to spend quite a bit of time, and there was a couple patches that came out there to try to get that game running, a lot smoother, a lot
Mhm.
sharper, because it was blurry. It didn't look good. I mean, there's games like, I mean, Metro's a good example. because if they follow suit, you've got like After the Fall from Vertigo, and you've also got her Arizona Sunshine 2.
Yep.
Both games had noticeable reprojection. Both games on PSVR2 were a noticeable drop from the PC version in a couple of ways. And they don't seem those games are running on Unity, at least I know Arizona was, and I'm pretty sure After the Fall was as well.
I
And
think so.
so both of them, yeah, I mean, yes, we talked about this before. Unity can it sounds like it can do foveated rendering, but it's not easy. And they just didn't put the time and the resources into making it work. I mean, there's a good chance Metro's gonna get the same treatment.
You
It's
would
just
think.
and I mean, and I'm not gonna make a case for PS5 Pro, based on like Metro.
No.
I
And for
mean,
the record, Tantrum there, you said Behemoth as a AAA game coming out there. I have no faith in that for the exact same reason Chris just mentioned in Light Brigade, in that it's being built for the Quest 2 as well as the PSVR 2. So I mean, even if we get the PC version, developing to the lowest common denominator, I just don't see Behemoth being amazing. I don't think it'll be bad, but to sit there and be like it'll be like AAA, I don't see it. Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen gameplay or nothing like that, so we don't know, but I
I'd be
don't
surprised.
I'm not counting
I
it
mean,
as
I look at games like games that had to take the Quest um into what's the word my words are failing me. They had to like keep that in mind when they were in the development stage. I mean, two games that just immediately jump at me when I think of what Behemoth could be. I mean, the obvious is the Saints and Sinners games,
yep,
because that's the same developer. And
yep.
I mean, the Saints and Sinners games, both of them, like, optimization is written all over them, from the size of the buildings to the details to the buildings to the repetitive textures, the
Oh, draw distance fog,
draw
like
distance,
there's oh yeah.
quantity of zombies, everything about those games is has been designed around having a smaller, smaller power base. I mean, even as much as it wasn't as nearly as good a game. Walking Dead, words, man, today. What the heck was the game that came up from Servios? Um, the other
What's
Walking Dead game.
Walking Dead Onslaught?
Thank you. Onslaught did not go Quest, and you could see it in the horde numbers. I mean, it got insane. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, those are examples. The other example that I think of when what Behemoth could, thank you, in consideration. Thank you, Extra. Ugh. Uh, the other game that I think of immediately would be Song in the Smoke. For some reason, Song in the Smoke comes to me as this, like, what Behemoth could possibly start to look like art style wise, even
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because of the size of the world that they might be trying to do. It just I don't for some reason, I don't know why, but Song in the Smoke just jumps at me as what Behemoth could possibly look like.
Look, man, we see trailer. Like I said, the Behemoth trailer. Now we're talking about trailers. The Behemoth trailer. I mean, it was all cinematics. We have no idea what this game looks like. Even, what's the game coming out here right away? System Critical 2
Yeah.
is, I believe, out on PlayStation headsets tomorrow.
Yep.
I haven't played it, and I haven't played it because I watched the trailers, and that game looks like garbage.
Looks like a
Um,
dumpster fire. I'm
Man,
sorry.
I've played indie games that looked right on par with that for the Oculus Rift 6 years ago. Like because I was System Critical. Then I watched the trailer,
I
and like
know.
they have the best. They have awesome trailer. They have really good art assets. Like it looks quality, and then you watch the game, and it's like woof. And maybe the gameplay speaks volumes. Maybe it's really 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 solid gameplay, but from what I've seen and the games I've played in the past, it doesn't look like it's doing anything remotely close to being interesting. And like I said, I haven't played it, so I'm not going to sit here and be like it's a garbage game. But it looks like a garbage game. So that's it doesn't look like what I want out of VR in 2024. But once again, that was very flashy. They have lots of flash behind their marketing, but the actual game from recent gameplay footage looks like meh. Even
Yeah.
meh's too much of a compliment for that. It looks less than meh.
Well, what Space Denizen says though is, I do think that Behemoth is going to be awesome. Don't get me wrong. Um, I have a lot of right now. I have all the faith in the world for the most part with Skydance. I mean, I feel like they dropped the ball a little bit. I think with Saints and Sinners Retribution, not so much in the fact that it was like kind of a 1.5 sequel, but more just that the Quest 2 release was pretty. pretty dumpy. So I mean that just speaks to lower power as being a bit of an issue there with their ambitions. But I think that I just can't wait to see another VR title from the
For
mind
sure.
of Saints and Sinners.
For sure. No, and I agree with that. I'm not trying to. I'm not
Lessons
trying to
learned.
throw them under the bus. I'm not.
But in a conversation around graphical power, it's worthwhile noting that Behemoth's scale and scope is going to have to be kept in line. I mean,
Look, we've seen Magic on the Quest platform too, so I'm not going to sit there and say.
That's why I kind of stopped myself. I'm like, because there is Asgard's Wrath 2, and even though you can still see where they cut corners on that game, it does defy most expectations. But we also know that there was a shit ton of money dumped into Asgard's Wrath 2. A lot of meta money. And I'm gonna guess that Behemoth is probably a decent budgeted game, but I don't think it's Asgard's Wrath 2 meta money.
We'll see, man. I mean, like, this kind of ties into the whole current economy, but I mean, like, with studios closing down left and right, or being, or not shut down, but some shut down, but or just the cutting of the layoffs have been crazy across, not just VR studios, all studios. Like, it's just impacting everybody, and I can't but wonder, like, VR is going to be a huge victim in this gaming recession. Like, there's no way in the world VR is not going to be like a victim. And where, as far as IGN publishing stories about, like, this PSVR2 is garbage, I'm done with it, this is, my worst decision ever made, whatever quotes he had about just being like, this is an awful headset. Like, it's not that bad. Let's calm down there, IGN. But, the issues he brought up, let's say they're valid. But his report was just a little bit too dramatic. Like, this headset just has nothing on it, which is not the case at all. It's getting games all the time, just not, AAA. But once again, as far as even flat AAA, we've said before, it's not like flat AAA is getting loads and loads of games either. This is kind of a problem with the current games industry as a whole. It's just, it's messy. And I think it's finally catching up to itself.
Well,
in regards to scope,
there's a lot of things going on too, right?
100%.
I mean, yes. I mean, I think you nailed the biggest thing that I think has to be brought into the conversation, which is, I think, one of the biggest issues that, like, Brian over at Pearl has with, like, IGN's take on it, is that they seem to kind of like pick on VR as the stupid kid in school, in the fact that it's like, no, everyone in school is stupid. Like, it's like the flat, like, the video game industry as a whole is hurting right now, and I think it's hurting from a lot of reasons. Not to get too doom and gloomy, but I mean, obviously, like, the economy is globally is not good. We're still dealing with the after effects of like pandemic stuff, and on top of that, you've got the uncertainty of AI. I mean, that's something that hasn't been necessarily mentioned a lot, but I think it's like, I think we're just seeing the beginning of layoffs, because because I think it's like a perfect storm. It's like, if your budgets are getting cut and you've got to, like, keep an eye on your bottom line, and all of a sudden you think you can pick up some slack and hire less people and have AI do some of that stuff. I mean, I think we're just starting to see the problems that are going to arise from that. But the industry as a whole is hurting right now, with people just not spending money on games like they used to. I think you're also seeing an industry that's just creatively bankrupt. Like, I am so sick of a large majority of AAA games right now. Like Ubisoft, we don't want to invest any more in VR because our Assassin's Creed game didn't sell that well. I'm like, you should be looking at the rest of your games too. Trying to
well, they are.
Yeah, I know, but trying to market their latest pirate game as a quadruple A game. It's a quadruple A dumpster fire. Like, I mean,
I've heard it's not
it's not great. I'm just saying, it's just an example of the lack of creativity and just
this is across all entertainment mediums. Right? I mean, this is movies too as well. Like, there's just the idea of a bigger, like, everyone wants bigger and better, and obviously that's we want that for VR too. But like I said, it just seems once again, it's these studios have got the idea in mind that the only games that people will buy are these massive, huge, $300 million extravaganzas that are just the same as it was before, or recycle. There's nothing new to them, and then they're like, why didn't no one buy our game? How microtransactions and everything else that's fueling these games? It's just people are pushing back now because money. I mean, this shit isn't cheap. Like $90 a game, whatever, 80, whatever the price is for Americans. That's no joke.
I think there are 70. I mean, well, but just look at the industry too. Right now, your three biggest titles are like Palworld, Helldivers, and I don't know if I'd say it's one of the biggest titles, but one of the more interesting titles that's come out right now would be Pacific Drive. These are all flat games, of course. Although Pacific Drive you can play through the UEVR mod. But all three of those games are indie studios, and all three of them are better than Palworld. I am not a Pokemon guy. I couldn't give a shit. But I'm just saying, like, as an example of like kind of like where popular video games are right now, they're not AAA games, and so I feel like the whole industry as itself has to shake itself and just really figure out what they're going to do with this. But like you said, is it when publishers and developers are looking at cut budgets, cut teams, reduced funding and reduced profit margins, it's like they're looking for sure things, unfortunately. And VR is not that. It's not time to grow.
No, and that's
and take gambles, unfortunately. Personally, one could argue that one of the number one rules of entrepreneurship is, in downturn times, that's when you invest, because then you come out ahead. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Not the way it's looking. Something we want to talk about, I guess, before, but when we did this topic last week that we didn't get to, was that like that day or the day before, Fire Sprite and London Studios was just shut down, and everyone cried foul because it was a VR studio, but they weren't working on a VR title, so we didn't lose much there other than the fact we lost the studio.
But before you move on to the Fire Sprite conversation, though, that's not a good thing either, though. The fact that London Studios wasn't even working on a VR game, so it's that's not good. Like, I assumed London Studios, I think a lot of us assumed they were working on a VR game because they had done London Heist and they had done Blood and Truth.
Yep.
And so people assumed they were, Sony had them working on another VR title. And now it's like they weren't. It's like, Jesus. Like, who is working on VR titles, Sony?
No one at Sony, man. I mean, and that goes with Fire Sprite now, which is leading into. But
now they did not get shut down, but they
were layoffs. And one of their canceled projects was apparently the upcoming Twisted Metal game, which had rumors of VR. So whether it was
there is another interesting aspect to the Twisted Metal story, though, because one thing I did notice was that I've heard that, like, a lot of developers, or I should say publishers, are starting to go, oh, maybe games as a service model isn't a guaranteed recipe for.
No, of course it's
success.
not.
I mean, we saw like the Suicide Squad game, just like again, no reason to be a live service game. And from what I was reading, Twisted Metal was going to be a live service game.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Agreed. There needs to be pushback on that, man. There's no reason. Even stuff like Avengers, all these single player experiences that are coming out as live service games, it's ridiculous, and it's just you're trying to bleed money out of people, and this is the pushback for that. This is people just not buying this or or holding off till reviews are out, not just day one purchasing. No one's pre-ordering anymore because people are getting smarter with their money.
Oh God, you'd hope so, but I'm sorry, man. Like, as someone who spends quite a bit of time in the Facebook PSVR groups and Quest groups, the amount of people that I see consistently pre-ordered day one, got my pre-order in. What are you doing? Like, what are you
Not
doing?
a. It's funny. I
I'm
mean,
sorry, but you are the problem.
for sure, and they'll always be those people. And I don't get. I mean, the only reason why I get pre-ordering at all is if you get a discount, and even still, you're playing with fire. But people who pre-order games when there's no incentive is bizarre to me.
Or the incentives like you get a skin. What are you, 5 years
Or
old?
you get the game a day earlier, or you can pre-install it now and play live instead of downloading
Okay,
120 gigs same day. Here he goes.
I
I did
I am
this.
I am victim of of a game that I'm really pumped for. Like, I mean, but it has to be a game I'm really pumped for. It's like you get 72 hours early. Or if it's a game where I know it's like a competitive game, I'm like, ha ha ha, I get 3 days up. So then people join me. I'm the boss. I fall victim to that marketing ploy. I agree. But this, it's just, it's
Part
like
of
you
the
said.
problem, Chris.
I know.
Part of
Oh
the
yeah.
problem.
Oh yeah. What is it if you're pointing at someone, you got three pointing back at you? But no, it's true though. And I but like you said, most of the time people are pre-ordering, they're just like pre-ordered. Like they just want to see it. They just want it, like it's almost just to have the icon of look at all the games that are coming. Num, 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 num. And it's like, oh, wah, the game sucked. I get it. The 10% discount usually, which is like a PS Plus type thing, usually upon a pre-order.
Yeah.
But even then, wait till you're a couple days before release, because
It's not worth $3 or $4, man.
at
It's
that
not
point,
worth it.
you probably got reviews coming out, or at least buzz is coming out. I don't know. Ugh. I ugh. Just don't give them your money ahead of time, especially with Sony, because for the life of me, I I cannot understand why we are still accepting that Sony does not give refunds within like a 1 week period, 10 hours of gameplay, like something comparable to like what Steam is doing. Like that we accept that shit. Where when it's like commonplace now on both like
On every platform.
Meta and Steam. I don't know about Xbox. You guys will have to tell me in the comments there whether Xbox is doing that. I don't know. I feel like Xbox is on the console side is still being tight about that. But before I forget about it, is I believe another huge reason why we are seeing such problems in this game industry. Yes, it's a problem with quality of games. It's a problem of I would say the imagination of games. Um, it's a problem of economies, like with people just having money and to spend money on their games. But a huge part of it, can point pictures at the big one being Game Pass. I'm sorry, but I think it's created a race to the bottom. And
Mhm.
and I mean they keep raising their prices too, but I mean look at the streaming. I mean I'm gonna go on. I'm trying not to go on one of my rants about streaming services, especially when it comes to like movies and TV. But I mean the streaming world is dying right now. Like I mean there's just no one's making money. They're all trying to like combine. They're all raising prices. They're all getting rid of password sharing. I mean they're all canceling shows. It's not a good space for anyone. And Game Pass is not helping the game industry. And you're hearing developers speak out about it, saying like it wasn't worth it for them. It wasn't
No,
worth it for them.
especially when like Game Pass relies pretty heavily upon those big, huge releases to kind of balance things out. But when you get something like Starfield, which I'm sure is still like sold decent just for what it is, but
Which
I
did
know it wasn't
Starfield?
Starfield, but I know
I
it
don't think
didn't.
it sold very well.
But I know it didn't sell to their expectations by any stretch, and that hurts. That hurts things huge. In regards to like Game Pass and whatnot,
It's
because
anti Bethesda in many ways too. When you consider like Skyrim, I mean they've released that thing on about everything but a dishwasher.
this is true. Well, hey, we're getting Xbox games on PS4 at some point in time, so maybe we'll get some. Maybe we'll get our Skyrim for PS5 now. Woo, PS4 for PSVR2. Sorry, words they're tough.
Well, I mean, I don't think, yeah, I don't know how the rights works with that. Like, I don't know if Microsoft bought the back catalog with that whole thing, but I think that you are seeing,
They
you're
bought
seeing,
Bethesda, so I would say
yeah,
yes.
but I don't know what, but there might be a licensing thing that I don't know. I mean, more likely would be, is there any chance of getting a Fallout 4 in VR on PSVR 2? I
Well,
just don't see it. I don't see it. I
no,
don't
I
see them
don't see
wanting to spend
either.
the
I
money on it.
mean, No, I agree. I don't. Like I said, I don't see it even for all the reasons we're talking about now. I mean, even if now that Xbox or Microsoft is willing to play ball and be like, you know what, Sony, sure, like you can have Skyrim for PS or PSVR2, but we're not paying for that. So if you
That
want
would
to,
be that would be the situation if like we're like you're right. If there's an open conversation, they're willing to let loose the ties on the purse a little bit, then maybe it would be a Sony going, well, what if we spent, we'll give you this much money and to make a port.
I love the idea of Sony funding Microsoft to give us VR games. That is insane.
It's a crazy world. I mean, I'll tell you guys. I mean, for those of you who haven't experienced Microsoft Flight Simulator, I don't even think you have on
No,
PC. I mean, it is a level of VR that is so beyond anything any of you have ever played. If you haven't played it, there's nothing even in the same category of it. But the problem is the entrance, the entrance costs. It's like don't even try it unless you have at least a 3090. I'm telling you, like I have a 3080 and it struggles to get even 20 frames second in
I've got a
VR.
4070.
Now,
No.
could you? I mean, could you drop the graphics and get it to run? Of course you could. But to get what I'm talking about, the experience and
Yeah.
the feeling of that photoreal feeling, um, it's on a completely different level. And that tying into our topic would be an example where a PS5 Pro would not just be like something I
Right.
like; it would be necessary.
Except for the fact that it still has to be built for the PS5.
Of
And
course.
this is where the
And
problem
you're right,
lies, right?
and that you're right, and that's where it kills the conversation. Because do I think there's some titles that the PS5 Pro could allow us to run?
Oh, for sure.
Unfortunately, still just a handful because like PC VR, like its best titles are pretty much years old. But like for example, like we've talked about it before, like to get like the new Dirt or the new WRC game from Codemasters, to get the new F1 game from Codemasters VR when they've gone PC VR and they're not going to go PSVR2. I still stand by the fact that I think we're not seeing those on PSVR2 because it would require Codemasters to do so much optimization and using dynamic foveated rendering on the PSVR2 that they just don't see the value in it. They
I
don't see
got
the value. I was just going to say, they don't see the value in it. And the fact that they can't just do a PSVR2, a PS5 Pro version of it gives you no advantages then.
All right, and so this also brings me to another point as well. In that I only just thought of this. I kind of forgot, but what happened between last pod and this episode is that all the announcements came out. Or did we talk about the fact that Sony's working on PS5 or PSVR2 working on a PC? Did we talk about that?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. That being said, so now we're talking about buying a PS5 Pro for X number of dollars, or now now you're getting into that realm of having getting a PC. If your PSVR2 headset works with a PC, if this actually happens, well then now we're not talking. You're not being bottlenecked by the PS5. You can just go and spend, spending more money on a PC, but then but
yeah, PS5 guys, you only have to spend like $2,000.
But this is the problem. But this is what we're gonna do. Not PS5, like PSVR2 guys. If you want the best experience, PSVR2 guys, you guys spend $700 on a PS5, or it's. But it's a serious conversation to have if you're gonna upgrade to a PS5 Pro to get, like these potentially minimal upgrades.
You're right.
Or
You're right.
You're
right.
It's worth having a conversation. Like
that's like a really good example. If you could like for example, Livinator, got himself it was kind of like one of those pre-packaged PCs. His is kind of cool. It's like one of these little slim PCs, and it's it's not a powerful PC, but it's very well optimized. Whatever company built that PC, the components in it work really well together, because it's irritating sometimes how well that PC runs compared to the beast that I have. Or it's showing its age now, but was. Regardless, I think he's got like a 1070 something. I don't know what it is. Regardless, it doesn't matter. He's able to play almost all of these games that we talk about. I mean, there's outliers like Microsoft Flight Simulator and stuff. But for people who like want access to those PC games, whether it be Stormland or Half-Life Alyx or whatever it
Not
might be,
Stormland.
he's played Stormland.
It's awful.
Oh, well, okay. But you know what I'm saying. For those premium PC VR games that like, you know, that we all like know, even like say Asgard's 1, which came free if you got Asgard's Wrath 2 and stuff. To play those games, he spent like $800 on that PC.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Like you're pretty much looking at the same price. Like if you took what you were going to spend on a PS5 Pro, you spent that on a PC, found a really good deal, or you found a good used one that had some decent components to it. You said like you could point at games that you would be able to play. I can play all these games now. I can play Elite Dangerous. I can, you know,
yeah, all of these games, as opposed to
I can play Dirt Rally 2. Yeah,
and as opposed to what are you playing on PS5?
Yeah.
Like you're like, and that's it'd be a different conversation if we were seeing more games, and that's the problem. Like we're not seeing the bigger games. I'm not going to turn this into that conversation, but it is a valid point, and it's like why a PS5 Pro, and when all it does is fix reprojection in a few games that have been out for 2 years because we haven't seen anything new. It's like why? Like, unless you just have money, it's just a really tough ask. And I just, yeah, it's.
Somebody asked me if it was like, let's say this was coming out. It's been announced, coming out in like the fall, and I don't even care. Let's say it's $700. Is it worth it? No. I'll say no. It's not worth it. Am I going to buy it? Yes. But again, it's a financial thing. It's like, oh yeah, I'll spend the money on that to have the best experience I possibly can on my PSVR2. I will. I mean, it's interesting to me. I wonder how many people, and you guys are in chat, you can fire off. I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you consider yourself a PSVR2 owner or a PS5 owner? Because it is really just a peripheral. And that's where I find it interesting, this conversation of the fact that Sony is going to like make it so that the PSVR2 headset can work on PC. Because it's like, I don't know. I still go back and forth on it. I've spent a lot of time, too much time probably, thinking about that since our last pod. Thinking around this idea of whether I think it's a good thing that Sony is opening up the PC doors. I'm gonna say the more I think about it, the more I am concerned.
You're an idiot. It's a good thing.
Okay. Do I think it's a good thing? For some people, yes. But all I'm saying is that right now, based on what we know, or should I say what we don't know, from the way Sony is giving us nothing to be excited for, really, from the Sony side of things. And it's like, I don't know. I'm just saying, one could make the argument and be absolutely valid in that argument that Sony is going, we just don't really want to support this. Have at her.
I mean, I don't see that. I think that's silly.
Don't think that's going to happen. I'm not saying I do, but from an optics standpoint, the more I think about it, it's it's like when you got your naysayers and you got IGN there. I understand it. Like, it's easy to say those things though.
Yeah.
You know, like it doesn't look good when you're giving us nothing for the year ahead, and now you're saying, here, you can use it on PC. It does look like they're just like, you know what? So let someone else give you the games then. Like, use your PS. You know, we'll let you use it where you can. I don't think that's the case, and like I told you, I think this is what I said with.
No, it's just your tone. See, your tone. After this whole conversation up to this point about just like the suffering games industry, it should be like, instead of you being like, meh, like, you know, we're giving up. It's more like, yeah, you know what? Here, like, have this to make up for the games we can't give you. Just like it's more just like it's like a blessing if you can you know, if you can afford to have a PC.
It is, but and I don't want to come off as like the negative side of it. I'm just saying that like there is still the other side to it though. Like, it's my same argument with the UEVR mod, where it's kind of like, yes, this is great in the short term because it's like I can play all these games. It's like, okay, but then it also kind of like there's developers that are like, I just not gonna bother then. Like, it's just like it's tough. It let's just say it gives Sony less motivation. For example, let's just say the Half-Life Alyx argument. it gives them less reason to, spend the money, go that extra mile, and port it to the PS5.
For sure. No, I
When
mean, I do see that.
when now people when they could could justify that they've now given people access to this
I
in
just, you're
in one
just,
way.
but you're talking about such a small portion of the community. Like, like how many PSVR2 owners have gaming rigs? I would love to know the actual percentage on that, but it's like 20%. So you're still missing out on a very large in terms of percentage number of people who just can't play a game unless it's on PSVR2. I mean, it's just, people don't have multiple headsets.
Yep.
Everyone does anyways. So I'm not dismissing your argument. I mean, you're making it. It's a good point, but um, I think as far as the smaller devs too, I mean, I don't know. I don't know about the cost in regards to like Sony's QA process and what it takes to actually get their game on the store and blah 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 blah. I know all the stores take about the same amount off, like 30% is kind of the running um words. It's how much each publisher, whatever platform takes from each game sale is roughly 30%. Whew. So, but that being said, like I said, if PSVR 2 still has, assuming it's over 1 million headsets at this point, we don't know. And you only 200,000 of those have PC VR. More than likely, they probably have a Meta Quest 2 at that point. It's kind of, I'd say it's pretty muddy situation. I just feel like there's still a large enough amount of headsets or Sony headsets there to justify your game coming to that platform, assuming your game isn't garbage or isn't, assuming it has the rep behind it to be ported to the Sony headset.
So I go back to what my original stance was when we had Brian and AJ on here, and I still default that I still think that I'm going to take the high road and take this stance as my personal stance, because I think it's more positive. So I want to go with that. I do think if we look at the way Sony is playing with PC right now, they're getting cozy with it. They're letting their exclusives go over there. We got Helldivers, which was simultaneous release across PS5 and PC. If we look at that as proof in the pudding, that they're looking at wanting to leverage PC as just more consoles to sell to, more controllers to put their games to. If they're taking that philosophy and they're bringing that to the PSVR2, which is very likely, since they're doing it with their bread and butter, like they're taking their biggest games and bringing them to PC. It seems like they're looking at it going, they just want to sell more copies of said game. They want it to get to more people, and they probably they see the PC crowd as being like, the PC crowd. Like there's a lot of PC gamers that are not going to buy a PS5. You're never going to sell them a PS5.
Yeah.
And so they're probably looking at that as just a market that they want to go to. And they don't look at it as necessarily a competitor. So if that is their mindset, which it looks like it is, it makes sense that they're looking at the PSVR2 the same way. And I guess that's good. And ultimately, I think that could be a good thing, because if they're looking at their next big VR investment, and Sony's like, we're going to spend this money to push the VR medium forward, I'm sure that they would much rather sell to another couple 100,000 PC headsets as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I'm gonna guess that again, they don't really see that as like breaking any kind of competition that they would have with, like, say, standalone Quest headsets, because again, there's still a market there that's never gonna go PC. They're standalones.
Yeah.
So, like I said, ultimately, if I had to summarize this, I still hope that this means it's a play for premium VR.
I mean, I agree. I
hope that's the case.
Right.
But there is the other side to it. Like,
for sure. And unfortunately, we won't, like, time will tell. I mean, obviously this year is still very new, and Sony we don't know what's coming, but Sony's also been terrible at communicating what's coming regardless. So there's still the optimist in me that is hoping they have surprises planned. I mean, rumors of the Astrobot game, but we don't know if that's VR or not. We just, as VR lovers who fell in love with Astro in the first PSVR, we're just like, that's our mascot, but we have no idea if he'll actually be in VR. I really hope it is, obviously. And like I said, we don't know, but I mean, like, it is concerning when, like I said, the last state of play, both games announced were, cross-platform,
One
It'd be
could argue
nice.
though that this is not premium time to be dropping
No.
big games, like even big game announcements. Like it was like, I mean, that's kind of them starting the year, and I can't say their flat games were super exciting to me either that they were announcing, right? And that's the other thing. Like Sony itself is just keeping their cards closer around exclusives. There's just not a lot of big exclusives that we know about that are super exciting right now. We know they're working on them, of course. I don't know, like again, like it's just like there's some cause for concern because I would have bet money that London Studios was working on a VR game.
Yeah.
Gee, you know, Fire Sprite, given the fact that I think they were pretty much bought as a VR studio, they were utilized as a VR studio doing Call of the Mountain. It's concerning that there's layoffs there. They weren't shut down. So they weren't shut down. Good. Layoffs, fine. They had to tighten their belt. I don't know. It's
They're a
still,
big. I know they're a big. They're up to 300 people at that studio,
yeah,
which I did
I
not
didn't realize
realize they
it
were
was
that
that
big.
big. Um,
Um,
but I mean, it's just like we don't know what they're working on. So it's, they're still, and I would imagine I don't know. I mean, they're big enough that they could have been working on more than one thing. Where I'm going with this whole like London Studios thing is that it's like we just assume Japan Studio is working on, or a Sobo or whatever the heck they're calling themselves
Team
now.
Asobi, I think, is what it
Yeah,
is.
Sobi. We just assume they're working on an Astro game. We hope it's VR. Funny enough, Astrobot is an interesting example of a game where, we talk about hybrid VR games being the future. It's like it would be, if it was a flat game that was also in VR, it would be a lesser game, I think, than what we got with Astrobot VR. Because Astrobot VR was so VR that like it
Well, I mean,
fundamentally changes, like if
100%.
the game. Like I mean, the way the world grew around
My
you.
my immediate response to that is No Man's Sky, where they put the effort in to make some of the the interactions, like when you're getting into your ship, you have to grab the handle and lift the ship up, like
Mhm.
the stuff like that. It's you're not pressing X in that moment, so there is you can put the effort in to make
But
a
the world around you in No Man's Sky was, no matter what you played, was still a kind of a first person experience. Whereas if like I've played Astro, I don't even know what the heck they call it, Astro's Playroom, I think the one that like came with the PS5.
believe no yeah, the Astro's
Whatever
Playroom, yeah, because it was the
whatever that
playroom one,
was,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yep,
played that front to back, and it's great, and it was
yep.
super innovative, just like Astrobot VR was, but in different ways. Like it used the touch controllers a lot, and you were blowing on things and this and that. It's just that Astrobot VR had a lot of like things growing around you, and you're bashing your heads into things, and you were flicking things, and like just I would imagine like Astrobot now would be using the two motion controllers too. And
Mhm.
if they're tied to it being a hybrid game, we will lose some of the VRness, I think,
I mean,
because
sure,
they won't be able to go full bore.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you're probably right on that one. I just think that's at this point in time, I think that's the price we as VR players might have to pay for the next little while. But I mean, this is now we're just pure conjecture here because we're not seeing any examples of this coming out. I guess Madison will be the closest one we have coming up here right away in regards to being flat and VR. The last one would be Resident Evil. But we're not seeing as many of these flat to VR multi-release titles that we expected to. I expected way more 2 years ago when they first started talking about this. I was expecting, see, every game sounds dramatic, but I was expecting a lot more than the few that we've had.
But
And it does feel,
I still go back to the fact that almost all our marquee titles on PSVR2 they're all exactly what I would um call that type
hybrid.
of hybrid.
Yeah.
Thank you, jeez, because like RE4, RE8, GT7, No Man's Sky, all hybrid games.
Yeah. No, for sure. Um,
Um, Someone
but
said in there, whatever happened to the Farpoint guys? They did another game called Larcenauts, which was on PC and Quest. It was pretty much
it still
a,
is on there. You see, it's past tense. It's still there.
yeah, still there.
They're still
I
supporting it
know
as far as they still release content and
it was Overwatch basically for VR, and actually quite successful, especially once they worked out some stuff. I still felt like content, but it was a damn good attempt. And but weirdly, they've been quiet, and they never brought it to PlayStation. That surprised me as well.
yeah.
I don't know what's going on with them. I really hope they're working on something for PSVR. That'd be awesome. Um, they've just been really quiet. and I don't like I don't think Larcenauts was making them bank. So I don't think it didn't set the world on fire. It was better than X8, but which is another kind of like hero shooter that came out. But
I mean, yeah,
um,
you go to the website, it lists Farpoint and
yeah.
Larcenauts.
Now, GameCat, their photo nutter, you said that more devs will use eye tracking foveated through PC. I'm gonna guess, unfortunately, not. And that is one downside, is that when we start thinking of opening up the ecosystem to PC, because I had always said that there were two things on PS5 when looking at PSVR2 that was like massive competitive advantages for Sony, in the fact that they knew that every single console had an SSD, and not just an SSD, but they knew the exact speed of the SSD, um, and that every single headset had eye tracking, and so that any developer who wanted to make a game for the PSVR2 could guarantee that they could use that pipeline from the SSD to transfer information like in real time almost, and they could use eye tracking to, you know, be able to get the most out of that system. As soon as you put it onto PC, and they're looking at PC development, well, there's like not a lot of other VR headsets have eye tracking,
Hmm.
especially ones that people are using. Like if you look at it on PC, it's like all Quest 2 and Quest 3 and Index basically, none of which have eye tracking.
And we
That's
don't
why
even know.
I was really bummed out when they Quest 3 didn't come out with eye tracking. I thought that
Agreed.
it was
Especially
mind blowing to
considering
me.
the Pro had it.
And the
Um,
fact that you would think that'd be a priority to try to like take advantage of the small hardware that you do have,
Apparently not. I mean,
the small power that you've got, to try to like be a little more efficient with that usage. But I don't know. Obviously, they didn't feel like it was worth the cost. Or what someone had said is, I'm not techie enough to know if the implementation of dynamic foveated rendering also takes its toll.
yeah, and I have no idea how that works. Like, as far as PC, like if Sony even will have the option to enable that. I mean, I have no idea. Like I said, it was definitely it seems very specific to the PS5. Just given the fact that no other headset, um, no, we should say no other headset, almost no other headset that can play PC VR utilizes eye tracking. So there's no developers even making games that utilize that tech,
No,
and so for Sony to release the headset the way we expect it to be released, where you plug your PSVR2 into your PC and it just plays, which we still don't know. We don't like Sony's wording that was so vague. We don't know what they mean. Like, is it going to be a Steam VR app? Like, we don't know what they're talking
oh
about.
no.
It's just pure conjecture.
I would say at the bare minimum, I would say it's going to have some kind of like a Sony PlayStation app that'll handshake, just
Yeah,
like if you wanted to remote play something, it would be like a remote play app.
and that app, $100. That's where they'll get their money back. But yeah, so I mean, just to finish that thought up there. So even assuming they do the way we think it does, where you just plug your USB plug into your PC, that gets the headset working. But you start factoring in the eye tracking and everything else, they might just release the headset without that functionality. We have no idea how it's going to play. And obviously, hopefully, with it coming out or expected to come out before the end of the year, hopefully we'll learn more before it happens. But we just don't know. But once again, now then it's on developers to go back into their games and then recode them just to support the Sony headsets, which are going to be a tiny, even a smaller percentage of headsets
You mean on
on there than
PC?
anything else. Yeah, on PC.
I don't think it'll put anything on them. I mean, it'll all run through Steam VR, right? I mean,
I guess
essentially,
so.
right? And so it would just be,
Well, no, because I mean, so how many developers have complained about not being able to use the eye tracking in the headset properly because of XYZ? Like, it still seems like it's still game specific.
um,
In many cases.
oh, I mean, okay, yeah. If you're speaking specifically about the eye tracking,
Yeah, the foveated. Yeah,
I cannot see any developer like going to their PC game and somehow enabling dynamic foveated rendering into their game
yeah,
for a PlayStation VR headset. Like
yeah.
I just can't see that world happening. I would say more likely it would be interesting to see where there a developer's releasing a game say post fall 2024, and let's say like I don't know, whatever, any big decent graphically impressive game is coming out and it's going on PC, I could see them going, oh, okay, well maybe it's worth putting in there as an option. But again, it's like, are they going to put the time and effort into that? I don't know.
I doubt it.
Now, what would be more interesting to me is like if Sony does follow suit and they do say release their next VR exclusive, whatever that might be, and they release it onto Steam VR as well, so that anyone can play it. That'll be just interesting to me. Is like, okay, so the PS5 has dynamic foveated rendering. It's using it on the PSVR2 because it needs it. Let's say, and then on the PC, did it just have It just has recommended specs.
Yeah.
Where you just have to run it beefier, or do they include that in there as well for the for anyone who wants to play it on that side? I'm gonna guess Sony will allow it to be something that could be toggled on and off on the PC as well, because the work will have been done.
Right.
I would assume so.
I mean, that's once I think you're reaching until we see, until we actually see Gran Turismo or something, because none of the VR games that we have been announced for even the flat version, like I guess Resident Evil 8 and stuff. But none of the VR games that we have for PS5, the exclusive VR games, have been announced for coming for right. So until that happens, I wouldn't expect. Honestly, I feel like.
And they've never let the GT series go to PC.
Yeah, and I feel like with the announcement that the headset will work for PC, I honestly don't expect any VR titles to make that same leap. I don't. Just to keep what few cards they have for the headset like with them, because the second they do release Gran Turismo for PC, well then now like things have changed dramatically here, because now there's almost no reason to get you're better off investing in a more expensive PC to run Gran Turismo even better than the PS5 could. Like now it's getting to a very weird conversation. So I would be shocked if any PSVR2 exclusives made it to PC at all. That would be shocking to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting. I mean, Tantrum says people want the HDR OLED displays on PC. I assume he's saying. And that's a tough one, because it's like, I don't know. Like, I think I like the Quest 3 display better. I mean,
I agree.
The OLED's got nicer colors, but the Quest 3's got higher resolution. It doesn't have the mirror, and and the biggest thing is the sweet spot. You just put it on your head. It just doesn't matter how you look at it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a very nice display. And the OLED, is it a nicer display color-wise? Yeah. Like, I mean, you jump into something that's a beautiful game like Horizon or Kayak VR Mirage, and it's like, yeah, bam.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
But is it that big of a jump? I don't know. It's kind of like, are you a resolution guy or are you a color guy? The blacks are better, but are they way better? I don't know. I mean, ultimately we all win, but I don't see the PSVR2 being such a rock solid headset that PC guys are drooling at the thought of being able to get one.
No, I mean even
the controllers, maybe. The controllers, I'll give you.
Well, and that's another question too, because now obviously the controllers will have to work with it too, and then so is it going to be all the haptics and stuff? And it's the same conversation. I think me personally, I think getting the controllers to work, like just triggers work. They rumble when it says to rumble, and same thing with your headset.
That's all you're gonna get. No,
that's yeah. Nothing.
I mean, you can use the You can use the controller. I was gonna grab one. I don't have one in front of me. You can use the PS5 controller on Steam, and some people but if you play Helldivers and you use a PS5 controller and you're on PC, you get the haptics.
Right. I see what you're saying. I mean,
because it's a Sony game. It's built into the game, it's like, you know what I mean. It's not really a Sony game, but you know what I'm saying. I do think there's going to be a very big difference between games that come out either from Sony and onto PC, or games that at least come out in a world where Sony's now on PC versus like older games and how that gets used. Again, you're also talking PC though, and people can make shit work.
This is true.
I play with a lot of guys that are all over these UEVR mods. A lot of them are in chat right now, and I listen to them talk about like, oh, such and such a game and such a game. There's profiles already made for these. Like, people have gone in and already built up entire controller profiles to make these games like work. Like,
Yeah. No, I mean,
never underestimate the PC crowd to make something work.
This is true. This is true. And even this, yeah, you're not wrong. The second Sony releases this thing for PC, for sure there'll be modders all over this thing trying to do magic with it. Maybe they'll fix the reprojection problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this conversation went in a different direction than I assumed because
I agree.
Because you brought up a really good point. I never really thought of the whole, like, when you start talking PS5 Pro, especially when it comes to VR. Right now, there's this interesting component of the PC side of things. And what would you do? Would you spend that money and get a lower end PC and get a bevy of guaranteed titles? Or do you buy it on the PlayStation and just hope? I mean, it's not that simple because you're still buying a PC. And if you don't want PC problems, you don't spend PC money.
Right. So I'm looking at the price for a PlayStation 5 here. So in Canada, it's $579. So that's $500, I think, American, roughly. So like how much, like based upon that price, like how much is a Pro then? Like $700, like $200 more? Like how much can they justify charging for a Pro?
I don't know. It depends how they do it. They could also release the they could also release the Pro at the same cost of the original PS5 and then just sell the PS5 standard a little cheaper.
It'll have to be more than a little cheaper to like. You have to make that.
Well, what was the Pro? It was like $150 cheaper or more expensive.
More expensive? I want to say that, but
I don't remember. I don't know because then they dropped the price of the Slim. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough.
I never bought a PS4. I borrowed my borrowed my brother-in-law's PS4 for the first 2 months of PSVR, and then bought a Pro as my first PlayStation console like ever.
You know what? It's the McDonald's fries situation. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I used to be a manager at McDonald's, and McDonald's was shady as fuck. Sorry, I'm not supposed to swear. Algorithms.
Did so good up to this point. We're an hour and 10 minutes in, or 20 minutes in, and you blew it. You blew it.
Google's not listening anymore. See you, Salvador. Thanks for coming out, bro. McDonald's fries.
McDonald's fries.
McDonald's was sneaky, man. What they ended up doing was they ended up changing their sizing. What did they do now? They reduced the sizes in Canada. I don't know about you US guys. You guys like get like a tub of fries for like as your super size because you're a bunch of fat bastards over there. But in Canada, they decreased the sizes of the fries slightly. And they were like, we've done it to match the appetites or the requests of our restaurateurs or our whatever they would call them. And so they made them a little smaller and they lowered the prices. And like that's what people leave fries have leftover fries. So we've decreased the sizes and decreased the price. And everyone's like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll definitely get the extra large and I want more fries. And then a few months later, they raised the prices up. And it's like, you bastards. Now I'm getting less fries for more. And
for the same.
It's that, and I feel like it's eventually became more. But I mean, in Canada now, what is it like $6 or $7 for a Big Mac? Just the
dude,
Big Mac?
I don't eat at McDonald's, man. I'm better than that.
I'm not. I'm not better than that. Num, 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 num. Anyways, I'm the fat bastard we're talking about. I might as well go move to the States. Big Mac. Yeah, but that's the problem when talking about the console generation in retrospect, because it's like I have no idea what costed when and how much.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't even tell you if the Slim PS5 is less money.
I can.
Like comparatively to what it was.
So at Best Buy. Oh, so it's still the same thing. So it's still digital versus and the disc version, I guess. Sorry. So, I mean, bear with me now. Choose a country. I should choose. Oh, I can choose America. Sweet. Thank you, Best Buy. Nice. It's not loading though. Okay, PlayStation 5 consoles. Oh, we got this, baby. We got this. You can access my location. Screw you. So, in America, get out of here. I think there's a sale happening right now. Yeah, so it's $449 for the Spider-Man bundle right now. So the regular price of a PlayStation 5 is $500. But they've dropped the price right now, it looks like, for Spider-Man bundle. So it's $500 regular. American.
I don't know. Yeah, and then they'll throw in the game too, and that throws you off too.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Anyways, long story short, I still say what I said the episode before. I'm really interested to see how this plays out because I mean, I really hope that Sony doesn't just go, you can use your headset on PCs now, and then that's just a thing that just like has to get around throughout the the social media and your various game sites. I hope they like kind of do a bit of a thing around it, and it's like, yeah, you can use it on PC, and here's some games for you guys, and
Mhm.
or even like a big announcement of like a game that's going to launch across the whole ecosystem. Like, make it a deal. Like, PSVR2 is your premium VR spot, whether you're on PC or PS5. Like, that's how you do it. I don't think they'll do that. Or if they do that, they'll still just release it on a blog post.
And so yeah, so even so, just to get, I guess, as we finalize these points here, but let's say, so the PS5 Pro is actually happening, and there's no actual proof of this. Yes, it's all just a conjecture once again. But assuming it happens this year, PS5 Pro, Sony is like, yeah, it's here, it's coming, and for you PSVR2 users, now it can do this for you. Like, is there like what is PSVR? Does there even, do they even mention PSVR2 in the conversation?
They'll say higher frame rates, improved resolution, faster load times. You know that's what they're gonna say.
Man, I'm so sick of load.
And then it'll be like in supported games and load times. I actually, you know what, I have become a load time snob now in the world of SSDs, whether on my PS5 or on PC. When a game doesn't just load like this, like, I'm like, come on, what are you even doing? Like, give it to me now. I shouldn't have to wait for this.
Like, that was the whole promise with the PlayStation 5 and their SSDs, and it was like, oh my god, like, I still sit and wait for games to load all the time.
But you don't play it. You don't play the games you should be. Okay, like Ratchet and Clank, dude, from the menu screen, and this is a gorgeous looking game. From the menu screen, I've shown friends. I'm like, check this out. And it's like, and start game. Thump, you're in the world. I'm like, holy crap! It's like, it's instant. It's like from the main dashboard right into the game. Boom, you're in the world. And I mean, it's using that ability in game where you're like literally walking through game worlds. And they're actually streaming new worlds. They actually said the tech is like the only thing that is staying is Ratchet, and the world is rebuilding around him as you're like flying through portals. That's amazing. Returnal, and they're mostly exclusives. Returnal's another example. GT Sport, I think, is pretty like, I mean, 7. It's pretty slow in the menus for some reason, which actually drives me nuts. But when you actually say like race, it's pretty much like beep beep, and you're already, especially if you're in a running start. I don't know. It's, I mean, the Sony games really take advantage of it, right? Because they really got that pipeline like connected.
So yeah, bottom line is pro no. Gaming industry is
that is not the bottom line. Bottom line, pro
this
no.
summer, pro no. The games industry is doomed, and VR is going to suffer because of it. The end. It is though. I mean, it's gonna, as I said before, it's gonna be a rough. Like, VR is gonna suffer in the next little while here for multiple reasons. Not just because it's VR. I mean, VR is gonna be a victim of the times, I think, when it comes to these next few years. It just seems like what's happening in the gaming industry and entertainment in general is only going to get worse before it gets better. And I think our peripheral is going to suffer because of it. And
I think
it'll just be
going to suffer, especially in the premium side of it, which is
that's what I was going to say before you just cut me off.
Sorry.
I was going to say, except for the fact that, Meta is just fueling VR, and we'll continue to get these Meta built experiences, these Quest built experiences. So, and then, once the Quest 3 takes over, whenever that actually happens on that side of things, maybe we'll see a slight increase in what that can do in regards to VR gaming. But I think for the time being, as a PSVR 2 owner, obviously you're getting new games often, every week. It seems like now we're kind of on that same track, or something else is coming out every other week. They're not, the AAA premium stuff, but they're not bad games. It's, it's no different than the Meta platform, which is getting a lot more, but it's not necessarily a lot better. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, I think just Meta is carrying, Quest is carrying, VR right now. It shows in every single way. And yeah, it's kind of
Well, I
my
mean,
final thought
right now,
being,
if you're a developer in the VR scene, let's say you're an indie developer, it is a better industry to make a game in right now than it was in any year before, I would say. There's more money to be made and more to sell to than there ever has been. Even
no,
when,
Brandon made the biggest point here, man.
oh god,
VR is failing because there's no aim controller. It's
now
it.
I don't know.
That's what.
Now, I don't know if he's joking or not, but it's funny because I was just thinking the other day that we hadn't heard anybody cry about an aim controller in a while.
They should go on Reddit.
Now, oh really? See, we had an episode about this. I personally don't see an aim control. The aim controller only made sense in a world where we had move controllers and no analog sticks.
Yeah.
I mean, is it fun to have a gun in your hand? Yeah, that's what gun stock's for. But like to not have two free hands now just doesn't make sense. And proof is the proof is out there. Like Firewall Ultra, one of the biggest reasons that game failed was because it wasn't VR enough.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it had other problems too, obviously, but one of the biggest complaints that you saw across the board from people was it felt like a flat game that was in VR with everything with being button pushes. Guess what an aim controller would have done for that? It would have made it even worse. You couldn't have grabbed anything. You couldn't have interacted. I mean, that's the problem. They brought the aim controller game to PSVR2, and everybody wanted to use their hands. I mean, this is the world we live in now.
Press X to open door. What are you talking about?
More VR, more immersion. I wouldn't say it's more immersion holding a peripheral that you now can't take your hands off and you're locked to a gun.
No, I agree. We've moved on from the aim. Like I understand why people want it, but VR's moved past that. And like I said, Firewall failing is a perfect example of why of the fact we have moved past that. Like people want, like I said, in Firewall, it's it's a stealth game. It's strategy. I'm missing words. It's late, but basically the whole idea, like if you want to tactical, yeah, right. So the fact you can only open or close doors. Like remember the first game when you could like shoot through the holes in the door, and that one stage there with that one door stage all like the plywood doors, and where they're supposed to be doorknobs, there were just holes. You could actually put your gun through the hole and shoot through there. We know it'd be cool if you could like partially open a door and put your whole gun there. No, press X to open door. Press X to close door. Like, what? Like, this is not how VR is supposed to work.
Now, I mean, I don't know. We can't get into this too much because we go back and watch Brandon. You should go back and watch our old episode where we talked about the aim controller because we did a deep dive on exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, Firewall sold well with an aim controller, but again, like back in the day. But again, you have to keep in mind that was during an era where first we had no shooters on PSVR, and you didn't have analog sticks. I mean, it was great for those reasons, but the fact that with an aim controller you couldn't hand throw a grenade, you can't manual reload, you can't open doors with your hands, like you just lose so much more than you gain. I mean, it's like going to the aim controller to me was more like going to the arcade and having a light gun. Like it was fun because you had a plastic gun in your hand, but it when you don't need the analog sticks anymore, that's all it becomes now is the plastic light gun in the arcade.
Screw it. Next episode, aim controller. Why we need it?
Yeah, the aim controller revisited. We're
Bring
not
back
done.
the 3D rudder. 3D rudder.
Featuring Brandon McLean, even though he didn't know it. No, Brandon. I mean, it's still an interesting point. That's the reason we had the whole episode is because a lot of people still think Sony should do a peripheral. I mean, it just doesn't make sense from a Sony standpoint. They don't need it, and they needed it before.
Yeah, I agree.
Now it would just be the Super Scope. It would be this thing that nobody really wanted, and they're trying to make a case for it. And unfortunately, Sony's still not getting most of the big shooters. Like they don't have contractors, they don't have Onward. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. At least they got Breachers, but anyways,
yeah, no,
I feel like we're kind of winding down to a natural closing point because
I agree.
We're gonna ramble ourselves into another topic. But obviously, and all you guys in chat shooting it up, Brandon, everyone else, thanks so much for joining us and joining in the conversation. Really appreciate that. Again, special shout out to our patrons. You guys are awesome. We love you. Yeah, there should be a couple reviews coming on the channel. It's a slow time in VR right now. I mean, it just is,
Yeah,
man.
I
It's
guess I will
March.
actually put out that PSA here, guys. I know we kind of slowed down with reviews. Chris is still kind of getting back into the groove of things, but on the same
Chris
token,
is sad.
no, I mean, I've only I've only been I've only put out like one review a week, if that. And part of it's because like there's just nothing exciting, and obviously we're not here just to review everything that's exciting to us. But that being said, there just isn't a lot that's really grabbing either of us right now in regards to like, yeah, like I want to review that. It's, especially when, even next week we have like Cities VR coming to PSVR2. Well, I already reviewed that on the Quest last year. So a lot of the PSVR2 stuff coming is stuff we've already revisited, or we've already played. So maybe look for those reviews as well. But we're not going anywhere. We're not, we're still committed to putting out stuff. It's just, it is definitely kind of a slower time, and just keeping that motivation, or I guess restoring our energy for when those big things drop. We are planning on covering everything major, obviously. But in the meantime, if content's slow, it's just because, yeah, man, I just don't want to play. I'm getting tired of playing mediocrity.
Some of it's been my fault though. The work obviously was an issue for me. I mean, anyone who watches the show kind of knows that. Now I have no excuse. Now it's just mental energy and being lazy, and I really I would have liked to have covered Legendary Tales. Like I had it on PC, and then so that's kind of why it was like when you don't have the mental energy or the time, it's tough to like revisit games. And that's the problem sometimes with us having multiple headsets, that when PSVR2 gets something or Quest gets something or whatever, and it's been covered before, it's just tough to go back, especially when time is in short supply. But yeah, there's a couple things coming. Again, this an example of me not being on top of shit. I would have liked to have covered Stilts. That looks like kind of fun. It's if you guys aren't aware of it, it's PSVR2. I don't think it's just PSVR2, but it's
It's on Steam for sure.
Yeah, and it's pretty much a first person
Platformer.
Yeah, it looks cool. It looks fun. I mean, I gonna go out on a limb and say it doesn't look like it's for those who don't have their VR legs, since considering the entire movement system is has a bouncing thing. Kind of gave me Windlands vibes from just like how I feel it would be to play that game constantly, just as far as like the graphic style, major movement. Anyways, guys, it is time to say goodbye. Ryan, say goodbye.
Goodbye, Chris. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, Chris.
All right.